Guys, how are you? Sorry for being a bit late. Thanks so much for having me on Search Engine Journal, and happy Valentine's Day to all of you. I think it's only fitting that I get to come here on Valentine's Day and talk to you about voice search because, as you know, I love this topic so much. So I'm so excited to dive in and get started. If you have any questions, let me know anytime. Just pop them in there. I'm here to take your questions. And in the meantime, the lovely Caitlin and Kelsey have collected a whole bunch of the questions that you've sent in. So without further ado, I'm going to start digging into them. So the first questions you guys have asked me is been that it said that voice search is not just an idea for the future and that it is here now, getting bigger by the day. How big do I think voice search will become this year? So I think that's the perfect question to kick it off with because it's really setting the ground for why we need to be really actively caring about it on and on now. So let's think about just our everyday life to begin with. I can't walk anywhere without being hit on the head with something that is voice controlled. For example, at home, my TV remote control is voice controlled. So I don't have to type in like BBC. I just say go to BBC. And to be honest, I thought like, okay, I'm not really going to use it, Purna. That's like so lazy, but it's really convenient. So I find myself using it more and more. And if you were watching all the news coming out of CES in January, you heard about all those cars and car technologies being integrated with digital personal assistants. So, for example, Nissan and Cortana signed a deal. Ford has signed a deal with Google for all of their cars to have Google Voice Assistant. And of course, BMW also has Cortana. And then my other favorite testing of voice technology takes place between Aloft Hotels and Siri. So they've signed this partnership called Project Jetson, where you can have a voice control hotel room. So I don't even have to get out of bed to say, turn on the lights or change the temperature. I can just do that from the comfort of whatever I'm lying down or watching TV. So if you think about it, whether I'm driving to work, whether I'm just relaxing at home, or I'm on vacation, I am using voice technology. So it is everywhere. And we use it because it is so much easier to talk than to type. Did you know that it's 3.75 times faster to talk than it is to type? So the average speed for typing is about 38 to 40 words per minute, and it goes to about 110 to 150 for speaking. So because it's so convenient, and I'll give you this actual example. I was with a colleague and we were driving around Toronto and we were trying to text another colleague to say, hey, meet us somewhere here. So this girl was sounding out her text as she was writing it. She's like, we are leaving now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if we could just say it and dictate our text messaging, it would be so much easier. And if I'd been, talking to you even like 6, 8, 10 months ago, I would have said that this technology is mainly just restricted to millennials. But what we find is it's very evenly spread across different age groups, and about 65% of people say that they use their digital personal assistant now. That's a huge spike. And if, with it being tied to our car, we can now do searches at times we couldn't do before. If I'm driving, even if I wanted to figure out, like, hey, what was that other ingredient I need for this recipe? I had to wait till I got home because I don't want to be typing while driving. But now I can do that kind of search. So we can see an addition of new searches. It's not like cannibalizing existing text, though it may for some extent. But what we're seeing is that it's adding on more search volume. And of course, you see plans from people like Amazon who want to prepare for this too. And hello, Kate and Katie. That's so nice for her. Thank you for your lovely comments. Let me go to the next question you guys sent. It's what's the best way to prepare for this? And I've talked about this a lot. So if any of you are hearing it again, I'm sorry, but it bears repeating because of how important this is. My personal prediction, and just based on my research, is that this is the year 2017 that we're going to see voice search as monetized. I mean, did you not just see the news? What was it, a couple of weeks ago, where Amazon had reported that we're flirting with voice paid search, etc., with the Alexa and the Echo? That just bears listening and reinforcement. So the first thing we should do is just understand the differences, right? Voice does behave a little bit differently than what we're used to with text search. The questions tend to not just be longer, which I think we've long established that yes, voice will be longer because we use natural language. It also tends to be much more personalized, that which Italian restaurant should I eat at tonight, for example. It just means that we can't ignore the long tail, and we can't give those impersonal 10 blue links anymore. Because if the question is coming from more of a personal place, that, oh, I want to know about this, there is a reason why. So we should try to give a more personalized response. We need to cut down the steps that people take to get the answer that they want. So the main differences would be that the language is longer. Long tail really does matter. There is a local preference because people will tend to use voice a lot on their mobile phones and they tend to be on the go. So that's where we look at for those. And then, of course, the language choices matter. So the next question I get asked is, how is voice search going to impact SEO? And to go back to that, I think it's important for us to understand how these results are being ranked now. As of right now, Bing, Google, from the tests that I've run and people like Dr. Pete have run, I think we can safely come to the conclusion that they are not using separate algorithms just yet to rank voice differently. They tend to be ranking pretty much the same as they do a regular SERP listing. So for right now, we're safe. But the difference is with SEO is that position 0 matters more. Schema markup matters more. We need to give the search engines a little bit more information because in some cases, they're going to be reading out the response to us. So if you're position 0, for example, Google will give the answer as in, well, according to site XYZ, this is what it says. And Jen Slag from the SEM post has covered this part really well. I think she talked about it at SMX East last year. So you should look at her deck. It's such a really good one to find out more in detail about about position 0 and how Google is reading it out. Now, how do we optimize? Everyone thinks voice is so futuristic and that we can't do anything about it now. We can. It is certainly super actionable. It's more so for PPC than it is for SEO, just in my opinion, because you can see results much faster. But that's not to say that SEOs can't do anything. So I want to break down some of the things we should start thinking about. The first one all begins with your keywords. Now let me step back for a second and go back to the volume that is voice search right now. And if I looked at Mary Meeker's State of the Industry Trends that she releases usually late summer every year, she released some numbers. So according to her report, 20% of all Android mobile searches, according to Google, are voice searches. On Baidu, 1 in 10 searches are coming from voice. So while we can see that the numbers are small, they're still pretty significant and we should be paying attention. And something I realized just while researching this was, if I did a search, for example, via Cortana Voice on my desktop, and she brought up the SERPs, then it was just a regular SERP result, right? Ads would be there. And I tested the same thing on Google with voice, and I would see ads. So whether we like it or not, some, not all, of our ad budget can be triggered by voice queries. So we should optimize. There's a few different things. The first one is look at your keywords. And yes, we want to add in things like longer questions, tools like SEMrush and answerthepublic.com are fantastic to go in and look at different keywords that could come to you. If I was you, I would go in and look at my existing search term reports or keyword research related to my top search terms and see what could be looking like an assumed voice search query. So is it 5 words or longer? Does it sound like natural language? And pay attention to the verbs and the filler words. If I looked at one of our trash disposal companies as a client, some of their text keywords could be things like TV set disposal, furniture disposal. But if I look at the longer keywords that I call assumed voice, it would be who picks up old TVs, or where's the best place to dispose of my old furniture. So it becomes active. So think about that. And the main thing you should think about is cutting down the steps for the customer. If I was going to go buy shoes, then my expectation right now is I'll go look for, I don't know, black sandals, and then I'll go to the website and then I'll filter down by heel height and size. But with voice, because it's longer, we tend to give much more intent that, oh, I'm looking for the cheapest digital camera that's waterproof. So now no longer am I expecting to go to the digital cameras page and then filtering down by price and then by waterproof. If I'm doing the search for, hey, which is the cheapest digital camera that's waterproof? I want my answers to tell me, here, Purna, these are only the waterproof cameras, and that's on the lower end of the price range. I don't want to have to go in and filter anymore. And that's the key thing we should think about. Have the correct answer to some of the main questions that you could be asked. And in that sense, adding in schemas also really, really helpful to your, give us, the search engines, as much information as you can, and that will just help us serve you more relevantly when the time is right. And going back to sort of intent as well, SEO, you can do this with like FAQ pages or by, again, proper markup and structuring. For example, these are all tagged as waterproof cameras, or my PPC friends, we can set up ads quite easily for them. Simple. I always believe that it's very simple. Even if you just take 1 hour, you can still get a pretty good result. Now, yes, to answer some of the questions that are coming up, is there a link later to Jen's deck? I can send it later, and I definitely will. So one-word keywords for your other questions, Tanvir, they don't happen that often with voice. If you think about it, like I always give this example. If you want to know who's the Prime Minister of the UK, if you were typing it into a search engine, you'd type things like Prime Minister UK. But if you were talking, you would always say, like, who is the? And we do this very naturally without thinking about it. So one-word keywords, I don't see as being that relevant for voice searches, unless you're doing a follow-up, like, okay, who won this? Oh, when? Then you can maybe follow up. But otherwise, Tanvir, I would say we, in our own research as well for Cortana, we see voice searches tend to be much longer through the tail, even like around 5 to 10 plus words on average. And how big will voice search be in 3 to 5 years? Oh my gosh, that's a big prediction to make. I think it will be seen as really, really commonplace if we look at the current adoption rate. So if the current adoption rate and the ubiquitous nature of voice search everywhere, like in my car, in my house, in my office, is any indication, I think it's going to be really, really big. And the fact that it will be seen as common and something I'm going to use everywhere, it could be as big as, say, like apps are so commonplace now, even though they're not like replacing, mobile browser queries, or how mobile didn't replace desktop, but mobile is still everywhere. We still use it, but we don't like not use our desktop. So I would say that voice is going to be, in terms of usage, very commonplace, which means it will be really, really huge. And as a result, we'll just see a larger influx of search queries coming from voice. Now, I don't think it will replace text searches at all, but there may be some cannibalization, but for the most part, it will be more additive searches. Like the example I gave earlier, you couldn't type or do searches in your car while driving before, but now you can. I want to search for something while I'm in the shower. I can, when I'm not singing, of course, that is, but otherwise, I mean, more seriously, if you think about it, if you're illiterate, how do you use a search engine? You can't. And if we think about how valuable search is to our lives every day, then we do want to be able to use it and for everybody to use search. So I would say it's going to be really helpful. It's going to be the great like equalizer and inclusionary technology that lets more and more people use it. So that's, I think, why voice is going to be really, really big in the next 3 to 5 years. By the way, ComScore has a prediction on that as well. ComScore predicted that about 50% of all searches by 2020 are going to come from voice. So I don't know. I think it's a high probability that that can come true, but we shall wait and see. The next question that I have is, now we all know voice search is a consumer application for things like Amazon Echo or Google Home. Are there any commercial or non-user voice search apps or users? Well, I want to backtrack and look at this question and let you guys know that it's not just limited to these home devices. It's really easy for us to go and think about voice search as just being Amazon Echo or like Google Home because it's purely voice. You can't really do much else with it. But my belief is that it's only going to be a small percentage of usage because it's technology that you don't take with you all the time. You use it when you're home, and then when you leave, you're done with it. But what do we take with us all the time? What are we never more than 3 feet away from? Our phones. So I think we're going to use voice search a lot more on our phones. That's where we're going to see it. And that's where the growth is really going to come from for voice. It's the same digital personal assistant. So for example, I can use Siri on my phone, or I mean, I can use, let's say I can use Cortana on my phone or my computer. And I know that Microsoft has sort of announced that they're going to come up with our version of a Amazon Echo or Google Home, like the smart speaker. Cortana is partnering with Harman Kardon for that one. And I think that's coming out sometime early this year. So stay tuned for that. So she is there. And like same thing, your Google Assistant is on your phone, she's on your computer, she's on your Google Home. She knows you. So she's just there in different facets of your life. So that's something we should keep in mind. And it's not just us, there are lots of different commercial uses as well for these systems where voice search is being used, whether it's in terms of speech recognition or there's a wonderful example called the Seeing AI. It's technology that Microsoft engineers developed where if you are blind or seeing impaired, if you want to walk around and get something to describe the world around you, you just press a button on the glasses that you wear, and it will tell you, it'll describe what's around you. So it's not just for like shopping or adding things to your Amazon shopping cart or ordering Domino's pizza off your Xbox or your assistant. You can use it for a lot more. Now, the next question is similar in that line, is by when do you predict almost all households will have a voice-activated assistant? So going back to my earlier point, I think it's going to be less about households and more about individual people. What I know, like Microsoft's trying to do with Cortana and what a lot of these personal assistants are trying to do, we are going to be trying to make your lives easier. It's all about productivity and being helpful. It's the benefits of having a personal assistant, as if you were like a senior high-ranking exec who has their own personal assistant, can bring without, of course, having to fork out the huge salary because, hey, I wish I could afford one, but sadly I can't. But if we can get that from our personal assistant, and because we're going to use it mainly on our phones, which are like individual devices, it's going to be the place where it's not about household, it's going to be about each person. And if we think about when that's going to happen, I think the accuracy has a lot to do with it. Right now, Microsoft has the lowest error rate in the industry at 5.9%. It's like almost at par with human. And the scientists at Baidu have come up with this prediction. They say that when we get from, say, 94, 95% to a 99% accuracy rate, that's going to be the tipping point. That's when we'll all start using it Why? Because the friction's gone. If we think about it, like I have a very mixed accent because I've lived in different places. It's frustrating when when they don't understand you the first time, or if you have to repeat things with text. And oh, that's my little cat being annoying. I'm sorry. He wants to join in on Facebook Live as well. Um, so excuse the little meows that you hear at the back. Shh. Um, so if we ignore that, if we think about the 99% accuracy rate, that's when it's seamless. There's no friction. And that's when we start using it. And think about how much friction matters. Like, why would you use an app like an Uber or a Lyft? I mean, yes, okay, it can be cheaper, but if I think about my own personal usage or that of my friends, I don't use Uber because it may be cheaper or whatever. I use it because it's just so much easier. I don't have to sit and take out my credit card and pay the driver, or I don't have to go in and put in my credit card every single time. It's like I order my car, I get in, I get out, I'm done. It's easy. Whereas with the car, like you're running around, you're late, you have to like go and reach, put it in the machine, and sometimes the like machine's not working, and it's a headache. It's Uber saves us that headache. We use it so much more. It's easy. And that's where voice is going to be that. So I would say as we get closer and closer to accuracy, we're going to get a lot better. And if we think about how far we've come really far. If I think about what, now Google's been really open with their numbers. So Beshat Besati on their voice search team was telling us at SMX West last year that just a couple of years before then, their voice search error rate was like 20 to 25%. And as of last year, they said it was at 8%. So that's already a huge improvement. The more data that we get, the more these machines understand and learn, then the more they can serve us accurately. They'll get slang. They'll start to make the associations. For example, if Siri says hello Purna to me and I write back hi Siri, she'll understand that hi is an acceptable response for hello, for example, right? And now that's a very basic example, but imagine doing this on a very, very large scale. Let me check in on what questions I have come in the meantime if I go back to my list. Um, will they balance paid and organic results? Dylan, that's something that that's the billion-dollar question on the table, right? It will be interesting to see something Rick Vanderkoy, our head of Microsoft Search Advertising, has talked about. There will be a rise in screenless advertising because if we're just going to talk to it, we may want it to come back and tell us. So, for example, if I was looking up recipes for apple pie this morning and I'm driving past Trader Joe's every day to work, maybe my personal assistant could tell me that, hey, Purna, apples are on sale on Trader Joe's today. If you want to make your pie, this is a good time. So could that be an ad? Or could it be that I always go to Starbucks, but there's another coffee shop that's come up and it wants to say that, hey, we've got coffee on sale. We're closer to your office. Do you want to go here? It's all speculation. We're all trying to figure this out. What could it be? So stay tuned because I think what we all can do is we can shape it together. We're not going to just sit back and let it happen to us. We can shape what type of advertising we're willing to accept or what we're not. So I think we will see that. And the next question from Matt is, will security issues slow adoption? That's something that privacy is a very valid concern and something that we at Microsoft take very seriously, as do other companies. It all goes back to the balance of convenience versus what we're willing to share. Let me give you this example. Haven't we all been in the situation where we've tried to set up a meeting with like 2 or 3 more people, and it is the most frustrating thing on the planet. It's like it's at least 20 emails, it's back and forth and time wastage until we find one time that can suit everybody. But Cortana has this new skill where I can say that, okay, Caitlin, Kelsey, Matt, and I are going to have a meeting. Cortana, can you please set up the time? So she'll go and look at our calendars and come back with the one time that suits everybody. And it's easy. So for me personally, I'd be very happy to give her access to my calendar because she's going to provide so much more value. And if we look at the data that, not just us, like Forrester, Gartner have come up with some of these studies, and they find that the 18 to 25-year-old generation now, much more willing to freely give up some information because they place more of a value on the convenience it can bring. So that's something that we can look at and see. So hopefully that does help to answer the question. And that's something we will have to protect, otherwise not enough people will want to use this if we have that as a concern. Let me go back to my list of questions here. The question is, what's the change that you've been most excited to see in the past year in voice search? And what am I most excited to see develop in the coming year? I think what's been really interesting is to see is both the adoption rate and the level of accuracy, as well as adapting to different accents and slang. Now, Cortana speaks Hindi. She understands Australian. She understands different languages. And it wasn't the case before because it was developed in the US, so it tended to just understand like US accents. Whereas, you know, just even different English speaking countries have different ways of saying things. So if I'm really tired in the UK, it'd be like, oh, I'm absolutely knackered, and or you know even in India, like we say, if you want to bring forward a meeting, like if you want to push it earlier, we say preponed. We don't, so it's funny, you make up your own words. And Cortana is getting to understand all of this now, and so are the different digital personal assistants as well. So that's going to be um, something that's been interesting to see a machine understand human and humanness more. Plus, she's been better at being more human. It's awkward talking to a machine because if it sounds like a machine, right, it's boring. If you come back and you sound like a human and you're sort of warm and personal and bring some kind of personality and makes you almost forget that you're talking to a bot, then you feel more comfortable using it. So that's been exciting. And Xiaowai, which is our AI in China, who's designed to be your friend. She's high in IQ and EQ. If you broke up with your boyfriend, she'll check in with you and make sure you're okay. That to me, to see that people are willing to engage with an app like that. She's already got like 40 million followers plus on like Weibo in China, and she does like brand endorsements. It's fascinating. And then I think what I'm most excited to see is how these personal assistants are going to tie in all the data that they know about us to get more and more personalized results. If you think about what our phone knows about us, it knows where we are, it knows how we got there, it knows how we like to get here and back, it knows where we're going for dinner today or where we've gone for dinner before, it knows where we like to shop. It has all this data, but we weren't really using it very well before. But now that we can, like these personal assistants have given us this forum to be better with predicting needs and giving more personalized results. So I tell you, there's this shift in questions that we're seeing. We see the question going from where's the nearest Italian restaurant around me, which is how we're used to asking this and we're okay with it, to going to things like which Italian restaurant should I eat at tonight? Do you see that difference? Like it's a pretty huge difference. We want her to tell us or give us a recommendation for where we should go and eat. So for example, if it knows that I've been eating like a lot of like northern Italian food in the last 2-3 weeks, because remember she knows where I went for dinner, then this personal assistant can be like, well, Purna, do you want to try this like southern Italian restaurant place? It's really good. It got good reviews from your friend Kelsey on Yelp, so maybe you want to try that out. So to me, I think that's going to be like super, super exciting to go and see. And I've got two more questions to get through. Hi, Kendall. How are you? Um, the next question is, how do I think voice is going to affect conversion rates? Back to my point about it understanding us, I think it's just going to get better. We're going to see our conversion rates go up only because the results that we're seeing are much tailored to us. It's going to be stuff that we like. The search engines are the personal assistants are curating the content for us. So if I'm saying that which restaurant should I go to, it's going to be like, here are these two choices that I think you might like. So it's going to give me one of those two. And so that's why I think it'll go up. But it also just means that we're not going to show up as often as we used to. But that's way in the future, and that's something we're going to have to consider in coming years, maybe, because the technology still needs to grow and adapt. So the last question that I have here on my list is, what are the one or two things that SEOs need to do differently for voice versus text search? And I think we need to be paying more attention to some of those best practices, things that we could get away with doing, such as like schema and making sure our citations and rep management stuff for all those like NAP listings, that we could sort of get away with not doing that. But what we're seeing now is, Rand talks about this a lot, where he says that 40% of all searches will not go beyond the SERPs. And I've seen voice search just exacerbate that. If I'm looking for the shoe shop near me or restaurants near me, I'm just checking the listing, just how far is it from me? Is it open? And what are the reviews? That's all I'm looking for. I have no sort of desire to then click through to the website. So for that reason, we have to make sure that all of those are like your address is correct, your hours are correct, your phone number is correct. If you have reviews, then you're prioritizing making sure your reviews are good and accurate. So do your schema, update your citations, make sure you're answering the right questions. I mean, SEOs, we do all of this. We've got the awesome content. We've got the FAQs. Most of the time, we can serve the right answer that can come from voice search. So make sure you've got all your other sort of technical structure in place. So I'm going to go check through the comments if there's any more questions from you guys. But otherwise, you can hit me up on Twitter at any time or ping me on LinkedIn or anything. I am super nerdy about this topic and happy to chat about it anytime. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Happy Valentine's Day again, and enjoy voice search. Fall in love with it as much as I am. Bye. And you can come see me at SEJ Summit in Chicago on May 11th. It's in the Navy Pier, and it is a phenomenal event. I'm already geeking out and nerding out about all the cool speakers that I'm going to get to watch. So hurry and get your tickets, because I know that they're not going to last. Bye, guys.